Or did she put the chair up here? Or something?
Because she's going to sit.
Oh, okay.
And I thought she's going to introduce them.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I thought because it's an hour, and I wasn't sure she was going to. They're going to be talking.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. No, I wasn't sure if it was from the last guys or not.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's an hour.
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming. Welcome to everyone here in Glasgow and also everyone on the live stream. I can't see you, but you can see me, so hello. My name is Alice and I'm from Global Social Leaders and I'm going to be hosting a session today. I'm also joined by my colleague Amy, who is on Zoom. She is Head of Global Social Leaders. There she is. Hi, Amy.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you and we can see you. Hi. So Amy's based in Bristol, but she is joining us today and has supported me and supported us in getting this session together. So today's session is going to be a kind of collaborative session with two young people from South Korea and from the Philippines. They are two youth activists who will be sharing their stories about how they are taking action in their local communities to address climate change. And by the way, so they're from South Korea and the Philippines, and it's actually 10:30 p.m. in the Philippines and 11:30 p.m. in South Korea. So they are really, really passionate and ready to share their stories with you today. But before we begin, I'd just like to introduce you to the Global Social Leaders movement and just kind of give you a bit of background about who we are and why we do what we do. So Global Social Leaders, also known as GSL, is a youth movement made up of dedicated and passionate young people all over the world. We are currently active in 106 countries. It was created back in 2013 by organisation Future Foundations and the Wellington Leadership and Coaching Institute. We deliver in-person and online programs which really empower students to think about how they can make a difference and be the change and really kind of, you know, take action and lead the change in their communities. So it all kind of began with the GSL World Summit, and you've got some pictures there, and it all kind of started with this. So it's a program that's 2 weeks long. It's a residential program where young people from schools around the world and their teachers come to the UK and take part in lots of different sessions, workshops, courses over a 2-week period. We did this for a couple of years, which was amazing. And we wanted to take this experience and share it with the world, which is where the GSL Catalyst program came in. And the GSL Catalyst is a 3-day or 5-day course where we go into schools and kind of teach them things about leadership, confidence, global citizenship, and really, really empower them to be able to create a social action project which addresses a need in their community. And then when COVID hit, I guess like the rest of the world, we turned to Zoom, and Zoom became our best friend. And we turned the GSL Catalyst into GSL World Catalyst, and we took it and basically made an online model, which allowed us to reach even more young people in harder to reach areas around the world. And here are some examples of the programs that we've delivered over the past year. Our biggest program actually reached young people in 70 countries, which was really, really amazing. So on top of all this, we also run an annual global schools competition called the GSL Global Goals Competition, which is now in its 5th year. And it's focused on the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development, and we support young people to design and deliver social action projects which address a need in their community. And this is personally like my favorite part of my job, like really, really connecting with these young people and seeing the incredible work that they do on a daily basis. I mean, all the blog submissions and articles that come in, you know, waking up on a Tuesday morning and seeing a picture here. I don't know if you can see it, this one here. And just seeing that they've created a poster of the Global Social Leaders logo for a fundraising event, it's just so special, so cool. So yeah, this is kind of Global Social Leaders in a nutshell. We primarily, we ultimately exist to empower young people to be able to make a sustainable future for us all. And yeah, I love what we do. My role as communications manager is to kind of share their incredible work far and wide, and also to provide them with opportunities just like this one, to really amplify and champion their voices. So with that being said, I'd love to introduce our first youth activist of the session. Her name is Tanasha. She is 18 years old and is joining us from the Philippines today. And she's going to be talking about her social action project, Planeta Verde, which connects businesses and organizations with sustainable packaging companies. But I'm going to stop talking now and hand her the mic and let her do her thing. So welcome, Tanasha. Hi.
Hi, Alice. Thank you. I hope you can hear me fine. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanasha Saneji. I want to thank every one of you for being here and for listening to this talk and for giving me the opportunity to speak at COP26. It is truly an honor to be here representing the youth and speaking about what needs to be taken into action in terms of the climate crisis we're facing. So with all the environmental catastrophes happening today, from floods to droughts to wildfires all over the world, the IPCC recently released a report stating that we are to experience even more extreme weather than we already have been if global warming isn't contained below 2 degrees Celsius. And as discussed in Paris in 2015, the target was to stay at 1.5 degrees or less. But it seems like we're exceeding that number way faster than expected with the way the world is operating at the moment. Now, this all seems very overwhelming and sets the idea that climate change is an inevitable phenomenon and that we cannot do anything to reverse its effects. But this isn't entirely true. Personally, the Philippines, where I'm from, has a handful of its own environmental problems. So why do I say this? How can I not feel hopeless when I've experienced climate change firsthand? The most recent and concerning environmental issue in the Philippines is the increase in unsustainable waste that has been accumulating over the pandemic. When the pandemic began and people couldn't go to restaurants and shopping centers to buy food or other necessities, non-biodegradable and non-compostable packaging from online shopping orders and food takeouts grew exponentially as the public shifted to purchasing almost everything online, which meant deliveries and therefore packaging for those deliveries increased a lot. So around the same time this was going on, I used to help out with my family's restaurant business, and I noticed we were using plastic packaging for takeout orders. And this was when it clicked for me that our business was part of this exact waste management problem I just described. We were contributing to climate change as we were sending out hundreds of these plastic takeout containers each day. And all those containers would go through an ineffective waste management system, end up in landfills, pollute oceans, and reach all parts of the globe. So definitely I thought I had to do something about this and that this restaurant business had to switch to using eco-friendly packaging as soon as possible. So with lots of research and talking to employees, it was much harder than expected to shift to using sustainable packaging. The main issue was that there was ineffective communication between eco-friendly packaging companies and our restaurant. So it took several months to make this complete switch from plastic packaging to sustainable alternatives because of how slow the communication was and how long it took to research and reach out to eco-friendly packaging companies. So what 4 of my teammates and I tried to do was we tried to find a solution to this communication issue. We tried to bring up the idea of being a supply medium where we would supply eco-friendly packaging to restaurants and businesses ourselves. And after experimenting with this idea, it was difficult to implement and put in place. It wasn't easy for us high school students at the time to operate within sectors of business that we weren't familiar with. But we didn't want to just give up on any plans we had already put our effort into. So we worked on refining our plans and coming up with our final and main idea, which was to simply connect businesses to eco-friendly packaging companies through simple communication. And that's all we would do. We would use communication platforms to introduce businesses to sustainable packaging companies. And it was our job to explain why going sustainable is necessary for a business, and most of all, how that can be done in a non-complicated manner with our help. So in this way, we were tackling the main problem, which was poor communication, in a much more feasible way than our previous plan, which was having to physically supply packaging ourselves. And so this is how we started our organization, with a team of 5 members, naming ourselves Planeta Verde, which means green planet in Filipino. So the logo you see on the right is Planeta Verde's logo. And so after laying down our goals as a team and defining Planeta Verde's mission, which now is to reduce unsustainable packaging from accumulating in the Philippines, we were finally ready to start actually doing things. So the first thing we did as an organization was we built a presence on social media. We posted educational infographics about the environment specific to our community to educate the youth on how waste management plays a huge role in contributing to climate change. Now, these posts were highly informative and useful, but unfortunately took a lot of research and time on our end, and not many people were engaging with them. So now we plan to make videos with the same content, as they're much more accessible and interactive to people on the internet. Next, what we did was we started our main operations, which was connecting to eco-friendly packaging companies to restaurants and businesses. So first, we had to figure out how to facilitate effective communication between these two parties. We had to consider things like, which platform do we use to communicate? Should we stick to only one platform or use a multitude of them? And who do we reach out to first? Where do we find businesses, restaurants, and sustainable companies to contact? So ultimately, we figured all of this out. And so what we did first is we reached out to several eco-friendly packaging companies for partnerships. And so here are some of them that you see on screen. So some of these companies agreed right away, some hesitated and then later agreed, and some rejected us. So this showed us that although we do have good presentation skills when trying to pitch our idea, we still needed to work on convincing different types of companies with a more comprehensive approach to best suit each company's needs. Then as we moved on to reaching out to businesses and restaurants, the same thing happened. Some agreed to our proposal and some didn't. So here are 3 businesses that we have worked with and are now using eco-friendly packaging. Other businesses that we have worked with in the past use eco-friendly packaging only for a short period of time. So now we're working on how to help businesses stay sustainable long-term. So the main takeaway from facilitating all this communication and forming connections is that we can always keep learning throughout the process. So despite the slow start, where we had to overcome many hurdles, in the end, everything fell into place and we definitely had an impact on our community. And this impact can be explained in terms of cyclic consumerism. Basically, what this means is that instead of consumers supporting unsustainable businesses by, let's say, purchasing goods wrapped in unsustainable packaging, consumers now support sustainable businesses and therefore give them power to continue such operations. So this feeds the cycle of sustainable business practices. And so the idea of consumerism in itself is that increasing the consumption of goods and services from the market is always desirable, and that the consumer satisfaction depends on obtaining such goods. And so consumerism, everything we consume, is responsible for up to 60% of all global greenhouse gas emissions, according to a study published in the Journal of Industrial Ecology. And the same study states that about 4/5 of the environmental impact of consumerism comes not from direct behaviors like driving cars or taking long showers, which does have impact, but rather from sources further down our product supply chains. Like, for example, the amount of resources it takes to produce unsustainable packaging. That has a greater impact. And so this is why it is extremely important for business owners to educate themselves on the current climate crisis and provide access for consumers to become sustainable by providing eco-friendly products and services. It is crucial for consumers to have the access to be sustainable so that there aren't more and more barriers for a consumer to cross in order to live a sustainable lifestyle. And it is supposed to be accessible for the public to help the environment. And this is where businesses and governments are supposed to work together and form policies and discuss what is the best course of action in order to perform sustainable practices. Now, what about the average consumer's responsibility? What is that composed of? Does And individuals' actions even matter? Well, according to the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, between 60 to 80% of the impact on our planet comes from household consumption. So yes, individual responsibility does in fact play a role in climate change as well. So if we change our consumption habits and our lifestyle, we can definitely change the ecological footprint as well. So to wrap all of this up, the combined effort of both individuals as consumers and businesses and governments to work cooperatively is crucial to get the goal of staying well below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And everyone's role plays a huge part when it comes to facilitating change. Environmental damage is preventable and reversible, which is why it's important and never too late to start taking action now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tanasha. That was amazing.
Thank you.
The second time, amazing, totally amazing. Thank you so much. So we're going to open the floor now to questions. I think what would be best if we take some questions for Tanasha, and then after Cherry's talk, we can take some questions for Cherry and then kind of bring it back together at the end. So if our live audience here, does anyone have any questions for Tanasha? Helena, hi.
What I was really interested in is Tanasha's honesty in what it failed and we fixed and we went back, and what kept her going when it seemed to be difficult at times.
Yeah. So Tanasha, Helena's asking what kept you going when you came to these challenges, and what kept you moving forward each time? Right.
That's a really good question. What kept us going, I feel like what personally kept me going was overcoming all the hurdles and definitely talking to all my mentors and teachers. And then once we did get past hurdles, we would see like, oh, there's a specific solution to like one of these problems. And then we would see like the impact that we would have from solving a certain problem. Let's say whether we had difficulty proposing like a partnership agreement, which was something that was really difficult for us. We got help from our teachers, and like once we learned how to solve that, and once we learned how to work that out, everything sort of falls into place, and you actually see, let's say in our case, like businesses and eco-friendly companies actually working with you, reaching out, and they're giving input on how much impact we're making through them. And so I feel like it's truly the impact and like how much we get to contribute to our communities that keeps me going. Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you for your answer, Tanasha. And yes, you had a question. So we have a lady here, Tanasha, that's asked, some of the companies you mentioned actually stopped using their sustainable packaging after an amount of time. Do you know why that was, why they stopped?
Yeah, so we're currently in the learning process of how to make companies stay sustainable long term. But the reason why some of these restaurants and businesses that we work with stopped is because they wanted to have sustainable packaging for, let's say, an event. Like we had one restaurant order packaging through us for like a Mother's Day event, and they mentioned that it would be particularly difficult for them to switch long term. So we're currently learning how to like get past that as well.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Sorry, what was that? She's asking, why would it be difficult to switch long term? Do you know why?
Why would it be difficult to switch long term? It depends on the business, and it is definitely a big thing for us students to ask an entire business to switch their entire supplier. And it is a lot if they don't understand what effect they're having on the planet. So I feel like, I think I mentioned this. So we're trying to improve the way we project our idea to some companies, because different companies would have different responses. So I feel like one of the reasons could also just be that we didn't really emphasize what sort of impact they would have if they would switch to sustainable packaging.
Yeah, so kind of starting with the education and actually then
right.
What happens. So when
exactly.
Tanasha, when you pitch to these companies, do you have a kind of set presentation that you deliver and explain this to them?
Yeah, we do have a set presentation, and also we do make sure that we communicate with the business afterwards, answer any questions that they have. So yeah, we do.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions? I don't think we have any other questions right now. Tanasha, I have one question though. So
Sure.
in the Philippines, how does your kind of government and kind of local authorities kind of organize recycling in general? Is it kind of well done, or would you say it needs improvement?
It definitely needs improvement. In fact, the reason that my team and I decided to research and produce educational content on waste management was because the recycling programs here aren't widely known. There are a couple organizations, but they're not from the government. And so we wanted to place emphasis on how important it is to have recycling programs and just have an effective waste management system. So in terms of the Philippines right now, I feel like we still have so much that we can improve on in terms of our waste management.
Sure. Amazing. Thank you, Tanasha.
Thank you.
We'll invite you back on at the end, and we'll take some more questions for both yourself and Cherry, but thank you so much. So we'll see you in a little bit. I'm now going to welcome Cherry, who is a 15-year-old youth environmental activist from South Korea. Cherry actually participated in our Global Goals competition and won the competition in 2020. And she was also an Eco Young Hero of 2021 as well. So today she's going to share a little bit more about her project, Greener is Cleaner, and also share why she believes youth activism is so important. So welcome, Cherry. Hi.
Hello, Alison. Thank you for giving me the floor and introducing me. So let me begin. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cherry Song, a 15-year-old youth activist from South Korea, and today I'll be sharing my insights gained from youth environmental activism journey, as well as my vision of the future of the Earth. So here's my introduction, and I'm really interested in studying the studies revolving international relations, as I believe that solidarity and global cooperation is needed to reach equity in terms of social, economic, and environmental terms. I'm the founder of a youth-led organization called Greener is Cleaner, and I'm also a youth representative for the resource circulation in South Korea's Ministry of Environment and the chairperson of the National Environmental Education Youth Steering Committee. So I'll be speaking about youth activism for 2 terms and expanding my thoughts from there. To begin with, let's ask the simple questions of what, why, and how of youth activism. In my definition, youth activism is an organization of young people to create a change in the community or the system. I believe that the essence of youth activism is that the future of the Earth, the main stakeholders of the future environment, which are young people, lead the change. And through this process, they inspire and empower young people to join the movement and voice themselves to see the change they need. Youth activism, the concept itself, is relatively new, in fact. Because for generations, the world leaders have in principle accepted the fact that the planet must be habitable for those that come after them. But the involvement of the so-called future generation was not much more than several words in the policy document. But now that has changed. It has just flipped around. New generations are making themselves heard. These young people value diversity, equity, and inclusion so that the international and national measures taken against the climate crisis leave no one behind. And they're using climate science to call for meaningful action from their leaders. But why is youth activism important, and why should youth take action, not adults or the previous generations? I believe there are 3 main reasons, the first one being ideas and innovations. As youth are born in the Gen Z and the millennium eras, they do have the ideas that transcend those of the previous generations. Young people are reading and engaging with science and policy in a way that the previous generations actually have not. And this is because we know that our futures can be even increasingly dominated by heat waves, storms, and floods, and other natural disasters. As previous IPCC reports say, the global warming is potentially the greatest global environmental challenge facing mankind. And Boyan Slat, who founded the Ocean Cleanup to solve the Great Pacific Garbage Patch issue, was only 18 years old when he started the initiative in 2013. Ironically, the GPGP was first discovered in 1997, meaning that it has been growing since way before. The GPGP this year on October 8th, the final extraction of the Ocean Cleanup System 002 was actually done, which is really successful. The Boyan Slat, the founder and the CEO, said that the half-mile device successfully hauled nearly 20,000 pounds of trash out of the North Central Pacific Ocean. And the second reason why I believe youth activism is important is because we have the voice. As the biggest victims of the climate crisis, we have the genuine voice of the future. We voice ourselves to save our past, present, and our future. We strive to be part of the solution and the decision-making, which has never been done before. And lastly, the last reason why youth activism is so important is because of the current trends of support. Adults, international organizations, policymakers, and more have been showing their attention to listen to the voices of the youth. The United Nations, for example, has launched numerous campaigns and opportunities to have a dialogue with the youth. And taking on this support, youth need to take action to make your vision come true in cooperation. And there are many ways of taking action as youth, but the three that I like to introduce today are mobilizing movements to create a greater impact, raising awareness, and proposing policies. All of these actions are aimed to create a change in people's mindsets, society systems, and countries' roadmaps and policies. In response to youth activism, it is really critical and crucial for the policymakers to take action upon the voices that the youth make and not just disregard them afterwards. For example, youth washing and greenwashing should strictly be regulated and criticized upon. Zooming out of youth activism, I would like to share my deepest gratitude for global social leaders for allowing me to speak at this session. It is a spot for young people at different places around the world to speak up and grab the opportunity to communicate with people and the public. I believe that the COP26 is extra important because youth are taking a great fraction of the conference. And in addition, countries are reporting their progress or lack of thereof towards cutting emissions and laying out their plans to become carbon neutral over the next decade. There are clear signs that some change is underway. Global leaders pledged to end deforestation by 2030. President Biden unveiled the pledge to slash global methane emissions by 30%. And as such, action is happening and more action will happen. And youth are going to be part of the change and more involvement will happen. Moving on, I'll be talking about my journey, my personal journey of youth activism. When I was 12 years old, when I was in 2018, I was in the hospital diagnosed with an eating disorder called anorexia nervosa. And while I was in the hospital, I was the only source of information was television documents, most of them being about the environment and threats like plastic pollution, wildfires, and climate change. And here I reached a tipping point. I realized that environmental issues affect my own personal future and that I could influence others. After being discharged, I wasn't allowed to go to school for a month, but I wanted to do something meaningful in my community so that I can divert my focus to something else, do good for others, and thus do good for myself. And here I turned to environmental action, which is what I knew I was needed. Because I joined this organization called Greenpeace, and as we have an office in South Korea, and started campaigning, started planning events for the public that they can get involved in and create a movement inside. The next year, when I was 13 years old, I got opportunities to speak at mock UN conferences, as well as join competitions like the Global Social Leaders Global Goals competition to voice myself, share my action, and share my ambition for the future and for my own future so that young people could be empowered to join on this challenge to take action for their future and thus their environment. And moving on, when I was 14 years old, I expanded the area of impact by getting more involved in national decision making, meeting people from the National Assembly, corporations, speaking at conferences, and participating in more climate strikes. Currently, I'm 15 years old and I'm engaging in more international decision making, meeting people and the directors of international organizations like GCF, GGGI, the South Korean president, to discuss the roadmap for 2050 carbon neutrality, for example. And throughout this 3 years journey, there are many things that I've gained, and I would like to appreciate each value that I've gained so far, which are number one, recovery, my own personal recovery from anorexia nervosa, discovering my potentials through service as action, finding new skills, for example, communication, and lastly, networking, by finding people who empathize and share the common goal that I have inside. So the third thing on the agenda is talking about Greener is Cleaner, which is the initiative that I have launched 3 years ago. So how am I taking action? Greener is Cleaner is a youth-led organization that aims to empower youth worldwide to take action by themselves as an individual and to empower them to take action for the environment and learn that taking action for the environment is doing good for themselves. We aim to reach the SDGs of 11, 12, and 13 through the mechanisms of partnership for the goals, which is SDG 17. There are many ways in which we take action, and this is an Instagram page that we usually communicate with the public and share our actions. And the first thing that we do is raising awareness and educating people by creating articles, media presentations, participating in leading campaigns and strikes. Another way is adopting sustainable lifestyles and encouraging others to join, because we should lead by example and not just say it out loud and tell other people to do actions that we don't even do. The third thing is promoting eco schools. We believe that environmental issues are prevalent everywhere, and school is a big part and a place where environmental issues exist. By promoting eco schools, sustainable learning, and learning about environmental issues and the SDGs, we believe that youth leaders could be cultivated and more people get interested to take action for such causes. Lastly, we voice ourselves through competitions, policy proposals, and conferences. We don't just raise awareness, but share actual research done by the youth and shared policy proposals that we wish to see in the community. And throughout the organization process and leading the organization for 3 years, I learned that solidarity and working together is the key in creating a change. I learned that by involving more people into the activism journey, I can spread influence and promote justice. Because by doing that, I'm leaving no one behind. I'm involving people and appreciating the diversity of people who are in face of the climate change and who wish to take climate action. I used to be really overwhelmed by so many urgent global agendas and wondered why the international community does not take enough action. But through my initiative, however, I learned that it was me who was not taking action. I learned that I acknowledged and researched about such issues, but I did not voice myself and use the fullest potential that I had inside. And once I started my initiative, I experienced making real change in my community. By starting small and taking action sustainably while expanding the initiative scope, I learned that people power fuels the movement for change. And this is the same for the international community. It should not be just several countries leading the change, but it should be people power, the solidarity and cooperation that fuels the movement for change. Lastly, I would like to share my vision of the future of the Earth, the status quo with the pandemic, and how cooperation and collaboration just fits into the frame. So currently, the world is overwhelmed by the COVID-19 pandemic, but we should really think about the waves that are going to visit us, visit the society, visit different countries in the long run. There's a recession, obviously, with economic downturns. But the overarching issue that all of us are facing and have been facing is climate change. It is a climate crisis that we're facing at the moment, but we should not be blinded by the issue that is right in front of our eyes, which is COVID-19. So I just want to put this out to the public that we should look further ahead and have keen minds to think ahead and mitigate and be sustainable in our actions. Moving forward, I would like to propose this structure, this map of, like it is the acronym of MAP, but like it's monitoring, action, and partnerships. I believe that we need leadership and equity in resources for climate justice. 48 countries, including major emitters, are yet to set new targets at this moment of COP26, and some clearly have no plans to accelerate their climate ambitions. As the COP26 marks the first time that countries must announce in the public whether their actions will achieve climate targets according to projections from research, climate laggers must be called out. We need to accelerate climate action through monitoring by making sure that the policies are implemented, action through research and development, and partnerships involving various stakeholders and inviting youth especially to the decision making. So before I end my presentation, I would like to showcase the process of creating a change and being a change maker that I learned from future foundations and global social leaders. The first step I learned is taking responsibility. It is owning your action and being responsible for whatever the consequence, aftermath, or effect that you're creating. And number 2, number 3, and number 4 go really well together because by pursuing your passion, what you're really ambitious about, and contributing your talents, what you're good at, you get to enjoy the journey. It's the ideal balance of the two, and strive to live in the present and enjoy the journey of creating a change. Lastly, the step is to be authentic. Although you may face obstacles, challenges in the long run, you should really stay true to the common goal, the aim that you're trying to achieve, because it will keep you in a sustainable path and do not discourage you from different obstacles that you may face. So what can you do today to start your change maker journey? Making a change should not be focused too much on the scope of the impact. Rather, I believe that it is the true, genuine motivation that comes from yourself that is making the change significant. So with that presentation and with that quote in mind, I hope you really have in mind every day about what you can do today, what small action you can do for the environment, for your community, and for the system in general to create a change and make a positive impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Always a pleasure to hear you speak. And thanks so much for leaving us with that really, really powerful question. I think it's given us all a lot to think about. So I'm going to open the floor again to questions for Terry. If anyone has anything that they'd like to ask her about her talk, about her journey, about her project. Hi, yes, at the back. Hi. Yeah. So Terry, we've got a question here. She's asking, what would you say to those people who are perhaps a bit hesitant to start making a difference and to start taking action because they think that maybe what they do won't actually have a big impact in the long term?
That is a great question. And I've received a lot of questions from young people, especially who are really ambitious to drive change, but are faced with obstacles, with discouragements, or people not really giving attention to what they're doing. And I believe that what the mindset that they should implement it to themselves before taking action is that change-making journey is a long-term journey. It's not just a 1 month thing that you get to see the change right away. For example, if you conduct a campaign of returning plastic straws to a corporation that you believe that is making excess plastic pollution, they will not respond right away, and you will not get to see them eliminating the straw from the system right away because it takes a long decision-making process, implementation, and the change in what they have used to do. And that is the same with climate change. It has been going on for over 50 years, and it has been going like what actions have been taken in the past are showing their effects at the present. So different actions that we take will show their effects on the long run and the future way after we really could estimate. Therefore, we have to really believe and be patient, but keep the taking like action more sustainable so that you get to see the change and not get discouraged in the middle. I hope that answers your question.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cherry. And on that, Cherry, so how kind of easy or difficult have you found it to engage the older generations in kind of being more sustainable or taking action for the environment?
Thank you for the question, because I wanted to express how difficult it is to collaborate with genuine motivation in between the youth generation and those who are of older generations. I think that the problem or the issue comes from miscommunication, differences in priorities, as well as the current youth washing concept that has been going on in different countries, including in my youth activism journey. It is really difficult to change the priorities of people, because if they are involved in a system, for example, the government or the National Assembly, they have priorities that cannot be easily changed because they have the roadmaps, the policies, and different communication systems that have been going on. And for example, after I submit a policy proposal and through public support, it has been going on to the review stage. It takes more than 1 month, obviously. It takes more than a year. And like, since I've proposed the policy a year before, I'm still waiting for opportunities to communicate with the person in charge and really see the change being implemented into the society. And talking about youth washing, I think that because the trends are stating that if youth get in part of the decision making, it runs well. Many politicians are using youth as a mechanism to gain popularity or gain more attention into whatever they're saying. And I believe that when youth are just showcased and not really considered in the decision-making table, it is really not effective. So with those obstacles, it is difficult to engage the older generations with appropriate and genuine motivations. And therefore, as I mentioned in my presentation, the monitoring step of the map structure that I proposed is really important. Yeah.
Thank you. Brilliant answer. Thanks so much. Any other questions from anyone? No. Okay, Cherry, I'm going to ask you one more question. So you touched on lots of different points in your presentation, but I kind of wondered, in the umbrella of climate change, what do you think is the one change that you would say to people in their everyday lives that they should make?
That's a very good question. I think individual actions are really important. And one thing that they could do in their daily lives, I guess, is I think the main topic or the reason why individuals should take action is so that they can create a low carbon lifestyle. And there are two actions that I really want to propose, so I cannot give to. One would be striving to eat vegan so that it produces less CO2 emissions. And number two is using green transportation, because people move around a lot and for different reasons. Using green transportation is important because it produces less CO2 emissions or methane emissions. And same with eating a more eco-friendly and plant-based diet is because they like the process of creating such foods produce much less emissions to the atmosphere and thus contributes more to the climate action. So even though it may seem insignificant, it does a lot to the environment as a whole. So I would like to propose those two actions.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I hope everyone was listening to those two actions. Great. Thank you, Cherry. I'm going to invite Tanasha to turn her camera back on and just as well open the floor and just see if anyone has any questions for both of these two amazing young people. Just really more focused on COP and kind of youth voices at COP. And I just wanted to ask both of you, like, how important you think it is that youth voices are championed and amplified over the next 2 weeks at COP26. I don't know who wants to go first or.
All right, I'll go first. Well, thank you for the question. I think it is extremely important that the youth is heard during COP for these 2 weeks. I think Cherry summed it up beautifully. The youth needs to be heard because obviously we're the future generations and we're gonna be living on this planet for most of the time. And not only that, we are going to be making decisions for ourselves in the future. So it is extremely important for policymakers, governments, and investors, business owners to all pay attention to all sorts of generations, especially the youth. Because as Cherry said, I think she summed it up beautifully. It's like we all are change makers. So yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Tanasha. And Cherry?
Thank you. Tanasha has mentioned a lot of important points about why youth should be highlighted and championed in the next following weeks of COP26. And one more point that I want to add is that youth really focus on science to support their arguments. And I think that climate science is really important when stating anything, proposing anything, because that is the reality, that is the fact, and that is the path that the world is going to go through. So by listening to the youth who listen to the science and have brilliant ideas, I believe that world leaders can compromise and communicate with young leaders of the future to create a better change for the future society and environment.
Great answers. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? Helena?
First of all, to say a massive thanks to Tanasha and Cherry, because I think they've been incredibly honest and open, and I think it's amazing for all of us here to hear their story and to look at the small steps and what's the big impact. So I suppose it's just to say thanks and for them to trust that we will take their story and take it into COP and use it to inspire so many people to be honest, to be humble, and to think big.
Thank you. Did you girls hear that?
No.
No? A little bit. Do you want to repeat, Helena, with the mic? Or be able to do justice what you said.
Okay, hi Cherry and hi Tanasha, and I think just on behalf of everybody here to say, we're incredibly touched, really, really humbled by your story, by your honesty, and I think sharing your journey and what happened, what went wrong, what went right, but you didn't give up, and your vision for the future deserves to be at COP26. And I think it's a call out to everybody here who's listening to think about ways that we can share this, because every young person, every person from every generation listening to you would have huge climate optimism and also, an energy to do what the theme of our event here at the Youth Hub is, to just get on with it. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that's an amazing way to kind of finish and wrap up the session today. So thanks again to Cherry and Tanasha for joining us and sharing their stories with us today. If you want to check out their work, they're both on social media. You've both got your own websites. I think you had them on your presentations, but do you have a quick link that people would be able to get, or an or kind of social handle?
Yeah, sure. So my organization's name is Planeta Verde. So you can on Instagram we are planetaverde.ph, and also on Facebook it's the same thing.
Cool. And Cherry?
Yeah, for Greener is Cleaner, we have a website, greeneriscleaner.org, and for Instagram we use GIC as an acronym _Chadwick.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Great. And in regards to social leaders, we are at Global Social Leaders on Instagram. For everyone in the room, I'm going to be hanging around afterwards if you want to come up and ask me any questions as well. But I just want to say massive thanks for coming in and coming down to watch today, taking the time out to come and listen to these amazing young people. And also for everyone on our live stream, hello. And thank you for watching as well. So thanks very much. Thank you.